Welcome back to another edition of the Prepper Recon Podcast. Our mission is to bring you great interviews with preppers from around the world so you can be better informed and better prepared for everything from a hurricane to the end of the world as we know it. I've been purchasing gold and silver from JM Bullion since before they were a show sponsor because they have the lowest price of any dealer I know of. JM Bullion now offers free shipping on all orders. Check them out online today at jmbullion.com. Our individual first aid kits are now on sale. They're MOLLE-compatible pouches in Coyote, ACU, OD, or Black. They're equipped with an Israeli battle dressing, quick clot, TK4 tourniquet, suture kit, and lots of extras. It's perfect for your car, bug-out bag, or home first aid kit. Go to the PrepperRecon.com homepage and click on the IFAC store tab at the top of the page. They're on sale for $89, and that includes shipping. This kit could save your life. Today's guest is Jim Thompson of LifeChangesBeReady.com. Jim and his wife Cindy are the organizers of the free Summer of Survival webinar series, which is going on all summer long. Jim, welcome back on the show.
Mark, thanks for having me again.
Oh, absolutely. It's been too long. We've got to get you on a little bit more often. So you've had a ton of great guests on Summer of Survival already. Are you enjoying it?
I am. I've learned a lot. I've really enjoyed the quality and caliber of speakers that we've had, and judging from the feedback we've gotten, so have all of our listeners.
I've been learning a ton. I'm trying to listen to every single one of them. I missed a couple, but I'm gonna have to get the set afterwards, get the download set, so I can go back and listen to some of my favorites and also catch the ones I missed, because life happens, and some people I know they're gonna miss one or two, and you guys have made that available so that you can go back and get the ones you've missed.
You can, and one important thing to remember is life changes. Be ready. You never know what's coming your way.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, you've been prepping for a long time. Not to make you sound old, but when did you first get started prepping?
I was kind of raised to be self-reliant. All my grandparents all lived in the country and were farmers. My great-grandparents were farmers, and so being self-reliant was just a way of life. And most of them were either Irish or Scottish descent, and so they were cheap, and they didn't like to buy a lot of stuff off farm, and so they basically lived a self-reliant lifestyle. They grew all of their own produce. They raised their own meats and canned them and preserved them, and so I just grew up doing it. And then living here in Florida, we are faced with hurricanes, and so again, being ready for who knows what to come your way. I mean, remember, if you were here in 2004, we had 3 hurricanes within 3 weeks, and we lived almost 3 weeks without power, and it was no big deal for us, even with a small family at the time. We were able to set up basically a camp kitchen in our kitchen, and we did have a small generator that I hardwired into our panel, and we were able to pump water from time to time. We lived out in the country. We still do. And so I've always been prepared or self-reliant just by virtue of my ancestry and upbringing. But, it was 1997 or 98, when the threat of Y2K, my wife and I, Cindy and I, decided that there was the possibility that things could go south, and so we began to prep. And obviously Y2K came and went, and industry spent $100 billion on a non-problem, but we were still prepared, and it's just we've stayed that way. We've continued to live that lifestyle, and obviously it's brought us to where we are today.
Well, I can personally attest to your gardening abilities. The last time we visited you, you filled up our trunk with a nice variety of fresh vegetables. So I guess it comes kind of natural for you because you grew up around it. But for most folks, there's a little bit of a learning curve with growing their own food, isn't there?
There is, and I think I'm a fan of Jim Rawls and Survival Blog, and over the last couple days, I think they've had somebody on there by the name Dr. Prepper. I don't know if it's James Talmadge Stevens or somebody who was just the pen name Dr. Prepper, talking about gardening and how sometimes people are running under the misconception that, as long as they've got a box full of seeds and that they can feed themselves. And what they fail to realize is, well, you've seen my garden and the produce that comes out of it. Mark, it's taken me 7 years to get that piece of ground to the point that it produces the produce that you were the beneficiary of. It's not something that you just go out and throw a few seeds in the ground and voila, you're able to feed your family. It takes a lot of work and there is a steep learning curve, especially if you're under a time constraint or you have the pressure of not being able to go to the grocery stores to get produce. Now all of a sudden you've got to grow it. Well, I mean, radishes are probably the quickest thing that will produce fruit, and it still takes about 3 to 4 weeks to get a decent crop of radishes, and you're not going to survive on radishes alone.
No, and you've gotten very deep into several aspects of preparedness. You became very efficient with firearms and actually become a firearms instructor. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Certainly. Again, part of my upbringing was being around self-reliant people that believed in their right to defend themselves. And, I can remember the first time I ever shot a rifle, I was about 6 years old, and I fell in love with it. I became a machinist, having been raised in a machine shop and just always loved mechanical things. And I've always had a love affair with guns, and it just led into, especially as society has become a little more uncertain and crime has escalated. You live in an area that I'm sure you can attest to the amount of criminal activities that take place in the larger metropolitan areas. I live in the country and I still want to be prepared. I still want to be able to defend myself and my family, and so I take it seriously. I practice. I have become an NRA certified instructor in all 3 disciplines, pistol, rifle, and shotgun. I'm a chief range safety officer and a range safety officer. And it's a part of who I've become. Not only can I be prepared myself, but I can also impart that knowledge that I've gained over a lifetime of being around competent shooters and becoming a confident and competent shooter myself to just be able to impart that knowledge into others.
And you've been very awake to a lot of the economic problems that we're facing with a lot of the monetary policy that's coming out of the Fed and the things that have been done by the Treasury. Are you surprised at how long we've been able to avoid the day of reckoning?
I have, and I attribute it to the Fed's ability to print. Everybody talks about the politicians and Washington D.C. and the Federal Reserve being able to kick the can down the road. As long as you have the ability to continue to print, you can postpone the inevitable. The day of reckoning will come. I did listen the other night, and I'm going to talk about one of our speakers. Joel Skousen was on, and he talked about the collapse of the economy, and he also added something that I've been researching for a while, another element that we don't think much about, but yet is real, and that's the prospect of war. And he's of the opinion that the economic collapse may not come until we see more and more infighting, either regionally, that leads to an escalation amongst other countries, and the foment becomes World War III. Will that happen? I don't know, but people are growing weary with the Fed's ability to postpone collapse. Although, if you look around in the local economies and stuff, I don't know about where you live, but where I live, the rent rolls are down as far as commercial real estate. When I look at all these markers out there, there are definite signs of weakness everywhere you look. If you look at the unemployment numbers, the real unemployment numbers, it's not 6.7% or 6.6%. It's probably more like 12.3 or 12.4 for the bulk of the unemployed. And then if you start looking demographically at at the different age groups and stuff, or the ethnicity of those that are unemployed, man, it starts to speak some real scary numbers. And so how long we can continue to kick the can down the road, I don't know. But I know that that a lot of people are wondering and asking themselves that same question.
Well, something must have spooked the Fed pretty bad, because they did cut QE by almost 50%. And, of course, QE was printing about $1 trillion per year, which represented a large percentage of our GDP. So when you start to pull that out of our GDP, now we just got our latest number from the first quarter of 2014, and it was negative 2.9%. Do you think that's a direct result of the quantitative easing tapering?
I think it's the result of. And another thing to look at is all of a sudden the Fed's not, or they on the surface appear to be reining in their QE. Yet if you look at some of the bond issues and purchasers, why is Belgium all of a sudden buying up hundreds of billions of dollars worth of U.S. debt? And where is the money? If you look at Belgium and its GDP, no way does it have the ability to do the purchasing that it's doing. Where's that money coming from? And is the Fed circumventing U.S. media or whatever by using straw men to purchase their debt? I don't know. You may know more about that than I do, but I know it's a question that I've asked.
Yeah, I do. It's they're buying up the debt it was to get us to throw the soccer match and let them go on through for the World Cup.
I saw somebody's post something like that on one of the blogs that I go to. I chuckled, but as a percentage of GDP, how does a country like Belgium, who hasn't had a sitting government now for 3 or 4 years, how do they afford to buy up the quantities of debt that they're buying? And where's that money coming from?
I suppose it's some kind of a puppet buy, is what it sounds like to me.
That would be my guess, and whether that's true or not, I think remains to be seen. But it sure makes one wonder, especially if you're awake and you're tuned into the amount of debt and the fact that the simple fact remains, Mark, that our economy is still built on debt, and our economy is driven by oil. Oil is still the primary driver in our economy, and we have a debt-based economy. Oil is growing scarcer and scarcer, and our economy being tied to that, what does that portend for the future? It's not a pleasant thought.
No, but for somebody that's been prepping as long as you have, and you see things keep sort of going on and on, despite all of the negative information, it sometimes starts to seem like things could just go on like that indefinitely. Do you ever get tired or get burnt out on prepping?
I've had those feelings, I think. One of the ways that I mitigate it is by living a self-reliant lifestyle. It's not something that I'm not preparing for a single event or the end of the world as we know it. I'm living a lifestyle that's self-reliant, to where if those things happen, I'm going to be affected just like everybody else, but not to the degree that some may be, especially those that are living in areas or living lifestyles that rely on others for their sustenance and their water and things like that. But listen, prepper fatigue, if we want to call it that, is a very, very real phenomenon. I did a Google search and came up with 417,000 hits when I typed in prepper fatigue. So it's something that's very real, and it's let's go back. You were at our house for a fire when we had several people over, and what was one of the topics around the fire pit? It was prepper fatigue.
Yes.
And everybody's feeling was, let's just hit the reset button and get this over with and get on with it. And those are very, very real feelings that people have, especially if you've been prepping for 2 or 3 years and you see things, while we've seen a deterioration in the economy and in our society and the socioeconomic position of the USA, when you look at the totality of that, it's easy to become fatigued. It's easy to become weary. It's easy to become tired. It's easy to have a lack of energy when you look at your preps, and it's important to realize that when people begin to pursue, being more self-reliant or even just stocking up, you have to balance your budget and your skill level, and there's just so many things to consider that after a time you can be overwhelmed, and so it's a real phenomenon. The headlines are just, especially for people that are prep minded, oftentimes they frequent websites or news sources that may and I'm going to throw Drudge out there because I go to Drudge a couple times a day. Matt Drudge is a master at putting headlines out there to grab your attention, but after a time the negativity or the constant and looming dirge of how bad things are can really start to wear on you. I don't know about you, but it's something that I have to guard myself against.
Yeah, we haven't been feeling it lately because we've had this this strong urge, whether it's from the Holy Spirit or our common sense, to, of course, we were one of the few people sitting around the fire pit that were not begging for the reset button yet, because we still live in Fort Lauderdale, and we are in this long drawn out process of a slow but sure bug out. So. And things are progressing nicely, and we're hoping to have the house listed within the next, definitely within the month. So we'll be getting up a little bit closer to your way, to where things are just a little bit more sustainable. While I always tell everybody that the Florida readout is sort of like jumbo shrimp. It's kind of an oxymoron. But because the state itself is not survivable, but we're not looking for somewhere to go for the meltdown. We're looking for somewhere to go for now, because Fort Lauderdale is presently unlivable. I mean, just the condition of the roads, the potholes here, it really looks like a third world country. Very few people speak English. And we had this big, blow up between the, I don't know if it was ISIS or who it was. There was somebody on Fort Lauderdale Beach on Memorial Day, and the police had to come in and basically shut down the entire A1A. It was, they were throwing bricks and fighting and people getting stabbed and jumping on cars. And this was for a Memorial Day celebration. They still had their EBT cards. They still have their housing, Obama phones, Obamacare, all the bells and whistles and, tricks and goodies. But they just couldn't handle, having a day to celebrate. It was too much for them. So they had to riot.
Boy, I saw the videos of that, and I was thinking to myself, Mark, it's time to leave, buddy. It's time to grab the go bag and get.
Yeah.
But I think that's just indicative, though, of and should you have feelings of being overwhelmed and weariness, and just a quick perusal of the headlines and looking at some videos on YouTube of things like that should inspire you to redouble your efforts to make sure that you're prepared and make sure that you do have a plan to get out, and make sure that if you are out, that you have a plan to protect what you have and to be able to sustain yourself and to be again self-reliant as far as water, food, medicine, all the things that may go away if indeed we do have a reset. And think about this, and I've thought long and hard about this. When you look at the Middle East, and you look at prior to 2001, the 9/11, while Iraq and Egypt and all those countries were painted as being the perpetrators of some of the unrest that was that we were experiencing. Saudi Arabia, was implicated. I have some friends that are doctors and they were educated in Egypt. They're Egyptian, and they immigrated to this country a number of years ago. But to hear them tell stories about Cairo was a very westernized city, as was Baghdad, and those places, and to see how quickly they devolved into what they have become. Libya, I just heard a news report today, I forget where it was, but I'll tell you, they were talking about the arraignment of the Benghazi mastermind, and how when they arrested him he had a gun, and his attorneys argued that in Libya right now everybody has a gun because it's such a lawless place. So what makes us think that just because we're the USA that we're insulated, or we don't have to worry about that type of unwinding? Listen, with the borders being as porous as they are right now, and I just saw a number, and I don't know, you maybe can validate this. I saw where they estimate that over the last few months, 386,000 people have come across the borders. Where do those people go? Are they taking them as the Department of Homeland Security transporting them to Fort Lauderdale, into Miami, into Oakland?
Yeah, they're all down here. They work for the TSA, and they're the ones that are patting me down when I got on an airplane to go to Kentucky.
Yeah. But the reality is that when you have that type of influx, not only is there worries about disease and all the things that you see on the news. I mean, I've seen pictures of some of the people that are in the detention areas and in the holding areas on the border, and they've got chicken pox. And I just saw a headline where they have an outbreak in Sacramento where they've taken a bunch of these people of tuberculosis. In this country, we haven't had to worry about tuberculosis since the 20s or even before. And so to all of a sudden a major metropolitan area like Sacramento, California, all of a sudden has a TB scare, what does that say about the fragility of our systems and the fragility of our society? It should give you all the more reason to redouble your efforts and to pull up your bootstraps, if you will, and say, yeah, I'm tired, or yeah, I'd like to see a reset come, or whatever. But listen, I've got to worry about the nasty now and now. I've got to worry about today. And I need to make sure that I have the skills necessary, and I am educated, that I do have the tools to live a self-reliant lifestyle. And I really, if I'm living in a large metropolitan area, I would really, really consider looking for a relocation at some point.
And it really makes you think that there might be some false statements or some false impressions being given by the mainstream media and the administration, that they're making all of these efforts to keep us safe by patting us down at TSA checkpoints in the airport, and listening to all our phone calls and rifling through our Facebook posts and our emails. And yet, all of we've got over 100 we've got bases in over 100 countries around the world, and yet we can't get a fence up on our southern border. It seems like there's something in that story that's just not sitting right.
Oh, exactly. And I think Charles Krauthammer said it best last night. I think I saw another news report. He said something about, if fences don't work, why do we have one around the White House?
Yeah.
It says it said it well. I mean, if a country can't secure their borders, and look at the hypocrisy here. We've got a U.S. Marine, sitting in a jail in Mexico because he made a wrong turn and happened to cross the border, and yet the Mexican government will allow hundreds of thousands of people to amass on their side and come across our border. Where is the justice in that? And is that a really hypocritical view of our border and the policies of security that the current administration has allowed to be perpetrated? I think that it's hypocritical, in my view.
It's quite a mess. But now back to our prepper fatigue conversation. I'm doing a study right now with Chuck Smith, and anybody that goes to Prepper Recon, you can always click the links button at the top of the page, and I've got a link that goes to Chuck Smith, and he recently passed away, but just a absolute great pastor. He's the one that started the Calvary Chapel movement out in Costa Mesa, California. And it has all of the archived sermons from Genesis all the way through Revelations. You can download those onto your iPod or your MP3 player or stream them from your computer or whatever, and hear him teach on just every single book of the Bible and every chapter by chapter going through it. And I'm going through Jeremiah right now, and one of the things about the prophet Jeremiah is that he got his commission 40 years before Jerusalem ever was sacked or eventually sacked by the Babylonians. They had a lot of sort of shots across the bow, but it was 40 years from the time he started preaching his message of turn or burn before everything actually fell apart. And a lot of the condemnations that he hands out to Israel in around 600 BC are very, very similar to a lot of the things that you see going on in America. And I'm just thinking from a sort of a prepper fatigue point of view, there must have been a lot of points in Jeremiah's life where he thought, why am I doing this? Is this really going to happen? Am I just sort of spinning my wheels here? Am I wasting time? Because 39 years later, and it's this guy's telling me, oh, everything's going on just as it's always gone on, and nothing's happened, and for 39 years you've been wrong.
That's exactly right. And if you look at last night, our guest was Melissa Norris, and she talked about pioneering lifestyle, and she talked about canning, and she talked about all the different methods for preserving food, and what she laid out were the tried and true ancient methods of food preservation. And I'm reminded, and you raised Jeremiah in Jeremiah 6:16. He says, "Stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is and walk in it, and you will find rest for your souls." It's important to keep your focus, especially, again, and I talked about this just a few minutes ago, about the headlines and the news media constantly bombarding us with negativity because it sells. And it's easy to become tired. It's easy to become disenchanted or distracted. Yet we're being reminded in Jeremiah to look, to stand, to watch, to ask, and to walk in the good way. And that good way is being, in my view, is being self-reliant. I think Steve Combs laid out a great scriptural basis. I don't know if you watched his presentation the other night.
I did, and it was fantastic.
It laid out a plan that's doable. It laid out a plan that fits any lifestyle. It laid out a plan that takes the reliance off of self and puts it on tried and true methods, and it puts it on the higher power. We talked about that before we went on the air. It puts the focus on God and His desire to provide for His children, and all of those things. We get caught up in this modern lifestyle. And listen, I love technology like nobody else. I've made my career developing technology, and my story. I've worked at the Space Center. I've spent my whole career in aerospace technology development. I love technology, and look what we're doing. We're sitting here, you're a couple hundred miles south of me, and I'm able to have a great conversation with you. Earlier in the day, my son is at Oxford in England as part of the Rhodes Scholarship Program, and he's been there for 3 days now, and he was around London, and we had a Skype, and he's showing us all these pictures. And listen, technology is wonderful, but when we become a slave to it, when it becomes our master, then we lose focus, and we lose our being, and we lose our person. I believe in body, mind, and spirit, and it's important that we keep the proper perspective, I guess, Mark, is the best way that I can put it, or we keep our focus where it needs to be. And I think, part of what we've wanted to do with Summer of Survival is to get people focused in the right direction, get them the skills necessary to do what they need to do. That's been the clarion call for Life Changes Be Ready, is equipping people, individuals, groups, and communities with the ability to sustain themselves. And it's important to have that scriptural foundation as well. And I think, Jeremiah lays it out pretty well there in Jeremiah 6:16.
And then maybe somebody else that maybe had a little prepper fatigue in the Bible. What do you think about Noah? Do you think there was ever a period in his life where everybody's mocking him and telling him how silly it is? And man, it's never rained. Why are you building a boat? It has never ever rained. And so, because at that point, I guess that everything was just the dew fell in the morning, and that was sort of how crops and things were watered, and they never actually experienced rain. So it probably sounded very silly for him to say that it was going to rain and the earth was going to flood. So I guess you could say that was an extreme case of normalcy bias.
Oh, no doubt. Could you imagine walking out every day and looking up to the sky and looking for clouds, and the ridicule that you would take, and then the self-doubt? Think about the self-doubt, and I think that feeds into prepper fatigue, especially when you have family members who aren't on board, or you have brothers and sisters that think you've gone off the rail because you've been prepping, and what are you doing? Well, look what happened to Y2K, and I think that those things are all valid, but it's something that you have to guard yourself against. And again, I'm going to come back to living that self-reliant lifestyle. When it becomes a lifestyle, you don't get tired getting up in the morning and going to work, and you don't get tired getting up and cooking food, because those are things that you do every day as just part of your lifestyle. And so as you move away from a modern lifestyle and you move back to a self-reliant lifestyle like your grandparents and your great-grandparents lived, and you start to incorporate food preservation and water filtration and all the things that people did every day as just part of their daily life, it takes the fatigue element out of it because it's just part of your lifestyle. It's important to remember that water, food, shelter, and protection were all part of daily life 80 years ago, or even 70 years ago. Those were things that people took for granted. I had an uncle that lived in Ohio and had a 110-acre farm, had a nice house that was probably built around the turn of the century, had a nice barn and horses and cows, and lived a self-reliant lifestyle without running water or without a bathroom in his house. He had running water. They put running water and a refrigerator in 1950 into the house. But when I was a kid in the late 60s and early 70s, I always marveled at the fact that I had to go to the outhouse to use the restroom. And so modern technology and the rapid pace with which we've incorporated into daily life has blinded us to the reality that this is a new phenomenon. This is a new way of living. The just-in-time lifestyle, I call it. Being able to go to Publix or Harris Teeter or whatever grocery store you have and buy groceries for the day or for a couple days, knowing that in a couple days you can go back and buy them again. What happens when that just-in-time that just-in-time delivery system crumples? And let me say this: that I've got a son that's a senior in high school, and as a summer job, he was able to get on with Publix, which is a local. Actually, they're a major grocery chain here in Florida, in the Southeast, and he came home the other day and had been back in the back of the store and said, "Dad, you wouldn't believe," he said, "they don't have a lot of food back there." He said, "The only thing they really have a lot of in the back of the store is soda pop and beer." And I explained to him the just-in-time delivery system, and again, I'm going to use that word fragile. We have a fragile delivery system when it comes to food. And I think my son got a firsthand look at the reality of it as well. Listen, Publix is probably the number one grocery chain in America today. I think, the Grocers Association votes them number one and has for like 10 or 12 years. Harris Teeter is number two. These are well-run organizations. They're well-managed. Publix is a privately held family business, and so they take seriously their relationship with their suppliers and their employees, and it shows in the quality of their stores. But they're built on a just-in-time inventory system that only has about 3 days worth of food in the delivery system at any one time.
Wow. Yeah, it's fragile. I think that's a great word for it. We certainly saw what happened to the payment system earlier. I don't know if it was late last year or early this year, when the EBT cards the system was down in several states for about 10 or 12 hours, and it was absolute chaos in several large cities where people were afraid that they weren't able to get their groceries for the day because none of them had any food stockpiled for tomorrow, just in case that just-in-time inventory system were to break down, or just even the payment system, which just didn't work for a few hours, and it was absolute chaos.
It was.
And I just couldn't imagine what that would have looked like had it went on for another 12 hours. If we would have got a complete 24 hours into that crisis, I think that it would have been a very eye-opening event for a lot of Americans to realize what their other fellow Americans who don't even know what we celebrate on 4th of July and can't tell you what country we won our independence from, or even tell you what the name of the vice president is. How those people live, very, very hand to mouth, even though they have so much spare time because they don't have to work, and still they put zero thought into what they would do about tomorrow. And when that tomorrow comes, I think it's going to be a mess.
I think you're right. And one of the things to remember, and especially as you find yourself becoming fatigued or asking the question, why don't we just hit the reset button and get this over with, or get on with it? I think that, I've found myself, again, we had that discussion around the fire pit, and one of the things that I've had some internal arguments, when I found myself asking that question, come on, let's just get on with it. Let's just get this over with. You got to be careful what you ask for. I don't think anybody has any clue how quickly things can get out of hand. Again, I'll use Egypt, and I'll use Libya, and I'll use the Middle East as examples of how quickly a country can go from being, up and running and people going about their business, and all of a sudden, devolve into complete chaos with complete social breakdown and wild mobs running the country. Look what's happening in Iraq and northern Syria right now with ISIS. And again, I don't want to get super political here, but it's important to realize that a lot of those individuals who are leading that effort are CIA trained, and I think even the Washington Post, which is not a right-wing conspiracy news outlet, recently published an article questioning the Obama administration on the fact that they were using the CIA to train people in Jordan, and now all of a sudden those people are running amok in northern Syria and in Iraq. And if you've seen the bloodshed and the crucifixions and the mass graves, listen, if you think that we're insulated from that sort of madness, just, again, go back. Mark, you just raised the issue of the EBT system. I think that was in October of last year. There was a Walmart in Arkansas or Missouri, I forget where it was, that within 5 hours of the fact that the EBT system had crashed or was shut off or whatever, they trashed the store. It took that store 10 days to get rebuilt and back open again. Within 5 hours of people not being able to use their government assistance, they trashed the store. That just shows again how fragile our society is and how on edge everybody is because of the economic uncertainty, all the wars that we've found ourselves in since 9/11. It's all taken its toll on the psyche of the country and left us, vulnerable, I think would be the best way I could put it.
Yeah, and PBS, they have a show called Frontline, which, I know PBS is a little left-leaning, but Frontline is probably one of the best news programs that's available right now, despite the fact of it being aired on a left-leaning station like PBS. But they just did an entire expose of Syrian rebels that were talking about being armed and trained by the U.S. And like you said, this isn't Alex Jones or Rush Limbaugh or somebody that's trying to make a point against Obama. This is coming out of a left-leaning news organization. So you're right, and yes, and not wanting the reset. You're right about that too. I love ice cream, and if there's no electricity and there's no grocery stores, then there's no ice cream. So that's probably my main motivator. That I think of all my preps as being insurance. I buy car insurance, and I don't say, "Oh, I hope I have a wreck today so I can cash in my car insurance." I buy that insurance and think of it as money well spent, and hope I never ever need it.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. And I think at this point it's important to pull back a little bit. One of the things or the themes that I like to keep constant in my mind is the KISS principle: keep it simple, stupid. I think as far as making sure that you don't get too caught up in the whole collapse scenario and the Chicken Little, the sky is falling. I think it's important to mix up your routine as far as your preparations go. I think it's important to step back periodically and take a deep breath, to do a little inventorying and soul searching and find weaknesses in your lifestyle or find things that you would like to change and write those down. And sometimes it's important to walk away for a day or two. We have a mutual friend that took his wife on a cruise, and he's a well-known prepper, and he did so just to go take a deep breath and reevaluate, rest, do all those things. And it's important to, I like to live one day at a time. You and I have talked about that. My rationale is found in, I have personal reasons for wanting to live a day at a time. But when I do so, what that forces me to do is keep things at hand. And when I find myself becoming full of anxiety or worry, it's generally that I'm looking too far into the future. And I think we're given a pretty good admonition in Matthew in the 6th chapter, 34th verse. Why do you worry about tomorrow? It's not here yet. What can you do to change tomorrow? You can't do a stinking thing to unwind or do anything tomorrow. We can plan today. I can plan the best I can, but I can't plan the outcome. I can plan for this situation and that situation, but the outcome is really out of my hands, and that's where faith comes in. And I have to trust that I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I do know who holds tomorrow. And that may sound cliche, but it's, for me, the rock upon which I live my life. I do all I can today. Cindy and I, we don't just talk about preparation. We live it. We practice the things that we talk about, but we also have to keep things in perspective and realize that, I can't change a thing about tomorrow, and I can't change a thing about yesterday. All I can change is today. And I know this may be a little graphic for some of your listeners, but I had a good friend of mine that used to talk about living just for today, and he had a pretty graphic image, and he'd said, Jim, he would ask me, what happens if you put a foot in yesterday and a foot in tomorrow? What does that leave you doing on today? And it's a little on the graphic side, but it drove home the point for me that it's important to make sure that I am living just for today, that I'm planning and that I'm executing those plans to the best of my ability. But you have to realize that some things are just out of your control. You and I aren't going to change the Fed. You and I aren't going to heal Washington tomorrow. Those things are going to, they didn't happen overnight, and they're not going to get fixed overnight. I am encouraged by the recent election in Virginia. I think that was a wake-up call for a lot of people, and I hope that the message was sent not to D.C. but to the Main Street, is that we can indeed still effect change at the ballot box. And while Thomas Jefferson talked about the tree of liberty needing watered with the blood of patriots from time to time, I think that's our last resort, and I think there's a lot of things that we need to exhaust before we get to that point. I'm not saying that it's not coming or that it can't happen, but I think we can still affect change through our votes, through community activism, keeping it local, and if you keep that focus, it gives you hope. It gives you energy to continue in the face of the wanton printing of U.S. dollars and the social unrest and social upheaval around the world. I mean, look what's happening in Argentina. I think Venezuela last week just had a major blackout. And these are all these big bastions of socialist thought and socialist life. And folks, that's coming to America if we allow it. And I think it's important that we do exercise our franchise and do vote our conscience and vote for people. And I don't care if they're Democrat, Republican, what their party is. It's immaterial. It's what philosophy are they leaning towards, you know? Are they willing to support the Constitution as it was written, as the founders intended? Are they willing to confront their local politicians when they start spending wantonly and when they start equipping police forces with military vehicles and all the things that we're faced with? That's not the America that I grew up in. I mean, I'm almost 60 years old, so I go back a ways, and I know I'm up on a soapbox here, but it's important to keep those things in mind, that we can affect change and that we can have a say. And it's important to make sure that we exercise our franchise and vote for people that understand where we're headed and are willing to stick their neck out a little bit and make some changes.
That's right. And if somebody like David Bratt can take out Eric Cantor, then anything can happen anywhere. So that was big. And you mentioned Southern Prepper One's video. He did an entire video about his cruise that he went on with his wife, and it was just, to take a break. He dedicates a huge portion of his life to preparedness and to educating people through his YouTube video to get ready for whatever's coming. But he takes a break and he goes out and lives a normal life and has fun sometimes too, and that's okay, and it's important. It's more than okay. It's something that you have to prioritize, and you have to budget for, and you have to set aside some time to get away and to take a breather, like you said. And I think that's all just great advice. And of course, we're going to have a banner just over the blog postings on Prepper Recon. It's been there ever since Summer of Survival started, and it's still there for the folks who still have not signed up for the free Summer of Survival webinar. Because you still got a couple of more weeks of some great free information, and of course you can still go and everything that you've missed so far, you can still sign up and purchase that as well. So,
absolutely.
Now, can you? But in addition to Summer of Survival, can you tell them where they can go to sign up for their free newsletter and get info on coming events?
You can go to Summer of Survival, or you can go to lifechangesbeready.com. And opt into the email list. You can do it either through the summerofsurvival.com or lifechangesbeready.com, and make sure that you are on the email list, because we promise not to blow up your email. We only send out, emails when they're pertinent or when we're announcing a webinar. We still have, I think, tomorrow night. Mark, you're on. I know I'm going to date this interview, but I think you're on tomorrow night, aren't you?
I was on tomorrow night in past tense. That's correct. Which for folks now that if you missed it, like we said, hey, this is a perfect opportunity to buy the package, and you'll be able to listen to all the great interviews at your convenience.
Yeah, and we can stop here and we can take off so you can edit this out. But it's important to realize, folks, that we did this event. We've done live events, and we wanted to make preparation and the different topics with great subject matter experts available for free. Obviously, we've spent tens of thousands of dollars putting this on, and it's we will recover some of that through the sale of the downloadable portions or the downloadable sessions, and every one of them is being recorded. We've got bonus sessions. Most of our speakers have agreed to do bonus sessions. Joe Nobody did a bonus session, and Melissa Norris was on last night, and she's agreed to do a bonus session and go more into depth. And these are important times that we live in. And I think the more knowledge that you have and the more abilities that you incorporate or try new things, improve skills or get new skill sets, that just gives you that much more ability to weather these uncertain times that we face.
And now you also have FortressTacticalDefense.com also, and you've got a store there. You've got the pump and seal, which allows you to seal food without like a lot of people use food savers and things like that are energy dependent. But if we ever have a grid down scenario, the pump and seal, it's basically like a bicycle pump, and you can seal your food in a jar. Is that right?
It is. That's probably one of my favorite prep items. I know that when we had Survivor Jane on, she talked about the ability to seal food without electricity, and that's the pump and seal has been a product that we've carried for years. It's probably my favorite prep item because no matter where you are, what you're doing, it'll seal Mylar bags, it'll seal ball jars, it'll seal peanut butter jars. We use it for all our dry pack stuff that we like when we buy bulk or we preserve food in bulk, and when we open up one of those bulk containers, let's say you've put 5 pounds of beans or macaroni in a Mylar bag, when you open that up, it's hard to reseal it after you've taken some out. With the pump and seal, you can put it in used peanut butter jars or used mason jars. You can even, this is one time where you can reuse the lid that it's not recommended that you recan with, but you can take that lid and put it on there, poke a little hole in it, put that pump and seal on there, and pump it up and store dry goods like herbs and spices. You saw my garden. I grow a lot of herbs, and we dehydrate them, dry them, and it's nice to be able to store them. And that pump and seal works very well to do that.
And you've also got some fold-up stoves. Those are great for a bug-out bag, and you just throw a little sterno in there, and you're good to go. You're cooking with gas, right?
Yeah, that little Emberlite stove. I sell two varieties. One of them stainless steel. The other one's titanium. One of them, the titanium, obviously has a longer lifespan because it's a higher temperature alloy, so it takes the heat better. And you can use sterno in them, or you can actually, if you're out in a bug out situation, you can take grass and small sticks, twigs, whatever, put it in there. If you happen upon a dry cow patty, you can put it in there and cook your meal that night, just like they do in about 2/3 of the rest of the world. So it's important, just to be, again, these are tools that are necessary to insulate yourself against an uncertain future.
And then you've got a little bit of precious metals on there as well. You got some copper jacketed lead.
We do. We are no longer a Wolf distributor, but we still have some inventory that's up on the site. And one of the things I think we talked about again right before we went live, I've just created a new product, and I'm going to debut it here pretty quickly. It's a bug out power pack. It comes in a Pelican case for all you gun nuts out there that know what Pelican cases are. I've taken a Pelican 1520 and I've manufactured a portable power supply that has 120 volt, has USB. It also has 2 cigarette lighter outlets on the side, and it can be recharged with a 20-watt solar panel. And it has 44 amp hours of power in it, either 12 volt or 120 volt, and I'll have that up on the website here pretty quick.
And that I'll hear on occasion. I'll hear a story of I guess it was a Facebook post I saw, somebody that had a CPAP machine, and they were just basically sort of a defeatist. Well, if we ever an EMP or the grid ever goes down, I'm just going to curl up and die. And I wrote them back, no, solar. And, you get one of these little pre-built out Pelican cases, and you stick that in a little easy to make Faraday cage and a couple of panels in there, and that'll keep you alive. And it doesn't take an EMP or a coronal mass ejection. We just had our first named storm of the season on the Atlantic coast, and anybody that's lived anywhere along the Atlantic coast for more than 10 years has, like you said, seen their share of hurricanes, or at least know somebody that has, and tornadoes and earthquakes, and there's all of this stuff that happens every single day. It doesn't take an economic collapse or a terrorist attack to knock out the grid, because it's like you keep saying, fragile, and we live in a fragile system, and especially people that have any type of equipment that's dependent on electricity. I was in Fort Lauderdale for Hurricane Wilma, and we were without power for about 3 weeks, just like you said, and I think that was Charlie that you went through, where you were out for about 3 weeks.
Correct.
And how much gasoline do you have to stockpile to keep a generator going for 3 weeks? Because generators really blow through the gasoline. But if you got that little Pelican case, you basically have a solar generator right there, and you don't have to really know anything about it. It's all put together for you. You plug it in and go, and as long as the sun comes up tomorrow, which as long as I've been living, we have a few cloudy days, but if you got some good 100-watt panels, even on a cloudy day, those things are going to charge, and especially for people that are relying on equipment like that, it's definitely something you have to do. And for preppers, because preppers, we usually have at least one fridge that's completely full. A lot of preppers have 2 refrigerators and a deep freezer. And if you go 3 weeks without power, or you go 3 weeks and you've got 10 gallons of gasoline for your generator, you're going to lose all of that. Probably even 20 gallons of gasoline for your generator is not going to get you through 3 weeks of keeping just your refrigerator and your freezer going. And that's something that doesn't take a whole lot of power, but it needs some consistent power. And that's what solar can do, is it can keep you from, it's a worthwhile investment, because you'll save all that lost food. And everybody has hurricanes, and everybody has tornadoes, and everybody has power outages, and they can go on for weeks and weeks, because the infrastructure, it's just getting more fragile by the day. It's not getting more resilient. Our system is it's in a deterioration mode, and it's just getting old, and we're not doing anything to fix it, and we're not doing the things that we need to do to keep it up, and it's just a smart thing to have, and it's a great investment.
It is. It's solar power. I mean, it's amazing. As I've moved in away from grid power, one of my projects this summer was to take my well off the grid, and I'm well into that. I've got the system all designed, and Mark, the next time you all come up, we won't have to worry about the power going off and not being able to take a shower, because the water will be solar powered, and it's a great way to insulate yourself. And the beauty about the Go Pack that I've made is that you can take it anywhere. It does weigh 40 pounds because it's got 2 batteries in it, but it'll provide 44 amp hours of energy. And you talked about a minute ago somebody on a CPAP machine. Cindy has a good friend of hers that she does herbal classes with, who is a respiratory nurse. And when she saw the device that I've built, her eyes lit up, because she provides in-home health care to people that are on ventilators, the modern day iron lung. And when the power goes out, these people are in jeopardy. And the system that I've built will provide about 13 hours of evacuation power for somebody on a ventilator. And you can get a long way in a car in 13 hours. I can drive about 1,000 miles, and about 900 miles. It takes me, my mother lives about 900 miles from me. It takes me about 13 and a half, 14 hours to get there. So, you can get from Fort Lauderdale to the Panhandle into a hotel, if you were on a ventilator with one of these units. So it provides, the peace of mind that somebody may need to evacuate.
And then if they want to use it like that for just as a backup, sort of a backup battery pack, they can do that, and they can charge it with a regular battery charger.
Correct. You can plug it in and charge it, or you can just, the way I've designed it, they're sealed AGM batteries, and you can put it on the shelf. It'll last undisturbed about 2 years. You have to recharge it about every 3 to 5 months if you're just going to leave it sitting on the shelf. But my recommendation is to pull it out and use it periodically. If you go on vacation, why not put it in the back seat and charge your cell phones just to keep the system functioning. But again, it'll last 3 to 5 months with no charge, and it'll last, the batteries undisturbed, if you just set them on the shelf, will last between 2 and 3 years. So it's a great investment, and it has multiple means to charge. You can run up to 400 watts through 120 volt, or it's got a USB port to where you can plug a USB cord in and charge your cell phones, or if you have a cigarette lighter type light or fan, you can run a blender off of it. I've run my soldering iron off of it. It's a pretty robust little system.
Well, Jim, it's been great talking to you, and hopefully next time we have you on the show, we'll be able to do this in studio, because I'll be up close to your neck of the woods.
That would be awesome. We look forward to you guys getting out of Fort Lauderdale and moving to a safer and more sustainable environment.
Oh, yeah, we can't wait. And thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Mark. It's been great.
In American Reset, the final chapter of the Economic Collapse Chronicles, the ultimate contest between liberty and tyranny reaches the apex. The Bear family and their neighbors learn the true value of community as they rely on each other to survive the war and the effects of the financial meltdown. Will the collapse bring an oppressive regime that enslaves the American people, or will the patriots prevail and guide the country back to a place of freedom, peace, and prosperity? Get your copy of American Reset in Kindle, paperback, or audio edition at Amazon.com today.